أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to Youth Perspectives. In the Holy Quran, there's a verse that says, "And hold firmly to the rope of Allah altogether, and do not become divided. And remember the favor of Allah on you, and you were enemies, then He united your hearts. So by His favor you become brethren, and you were on the brink of the pit of fire." Surah 3, verse 103. This verse stresses the importance of unity and striving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as our goal. Through many different trying times we see throughout our society, we're constantly reminded about examples that bring us together as a community. We're constantly reminded about sharing common values with each other, constantly striving to better ourselves so that we can be the best that we can be. And as a result, we strengthen our communities. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
So, welcome to the show, guys. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, this topic about community and what do we mean by community? First, let's talk, like, what is a community? What do you guys think of when you hear community?
Well, when I hear the word community, I just think of like a group of people that resonate with a certain cause or believe in a certain thing. That's what I believe.
For me, a community is just an environment that you're in that kind of impacts the way that you might do certain things, or really, I think a community just impacts your life in that if you change the community, it's pretty much like changing your environment in that manner.
So, if
respectively,
Brother Ali, what comes to your mind when you think about why we need, why the community is important?
I think it's important for a multitude of reasons. Of course, if you look at from a standpoint of the people in the community, maybe even the children in the community, everybody impacts the children. They say it takes a community to raise a child. Mm-hmm. That could the same be applied here, and I think that's why it's important. It's because if your community is strong, that also will strengthen the people that come out of that community.
So now let's look at the opposite, right? We're talking about why the community is important. What if you're in an environment or if you're in a community where, let's say, there's a lot of negative things that are maybe against Islam? Let's say you're being pushed away from Islam by being a part of a certain community. What would you guys say then? What does that mean?
I mean, your community is obviously going to affect you.
Mm-hmm.
What you surround yourself with affects you.
So just like having bad friends, for example.
Yeah. Honestly, that is basically, if you're in that sort of situation, you do have to go out of that and closer to your, like Islamic and Muslim community.
Right. So, Brother Ali, what do you think about that in terms of the negative aspects? Because we do see, for example, a lot of times today, you can say in some of our communities, it is sort of a, if you're in a community, you're in a community. If you're not in a community, right, you're kind of like an outsider to that community.
Yeah.
So
kind of like a group.
Yeah. Okay. So what about like a friend type of group that, some people maybe they're sort of pushed out of that environment because
if you're not initially in, you can't.
Yeah. So I mean, what do you think about that? Is that a positive? Do you think that we should be more open to other people inside of our communities, or what do you guys?
I feel like it depends.
Yeah.
Especially if someone believes in something haram. Like, can you repeat the question again?
Yes, no. So it's just about, like inside of our communities, like should we be more open, right? Should we try to bring more people together? Should we try to, reach out to more Muslims, try to build our community, unite our community as opposed to, just the way it is in terms of not a lot of people,
So are you talking about different thoughts of Islam, like different?
Just in general, in terms of the community, Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
I think we should be open to having more discussions with other people.
Yeah.
Just so we could build more connections with our fellow Muslims.
Yeah.
And which could help us out as Muslims in the end.
Very good point.
Honestly, I think if it's really like that, they should be like more included, right? It doesn't really matter, because if you don't discuss why, then you'll never know, like, oh, why is he like that, or why someone's in a certain thing, or why they believe that, or right? Then there'll always be you'll never understand why. You'll just be thinking, oh, this and that about one person, but you never understand why, because you never want to ask the question.
So the show is called Youth Perspectives, right?
Yes.
So putting it into perspective, if we're going to say, for example, what do we learn from the community, right? Like what do we feel is different, makes it better compared to if I'm reading Quran or I'm reading my namaz in Jamaat compared to just reading it at home? Like, what do we learn from the community that we can apply to ourselves?
Well, we can look at positive traits of other people. We could try to apply that in our own lives.
Right.
That's one way.
So, like, for example, if we see other people and, they're practicing religion in a certain way, like we see that, okay, they're better, they're more spiritually connected than us.
Or just
then it'll,
like better people in general.
yeah, so then it influences us, right?
Kind of like how if it's like a bad friend group, it rubs off on you.
Yeah.
If you're in that good friend group, or they're all reading Quran together, and they're all reading Jamaat, then it kind of rubs off on you.
Brother Ali, you could say what you think about this as well, but I did feel that during Ramzan time, and I, talked to a couple people, they also said the same thing, is that during Ramzan, when everyone was in the mindset of Islam, reading Quran every day, reading Jamaat every day, and then the second they got out of that environment, right, as in we're not going there every day anymore, they felt a huge difference, right? They weren't doing all those things anymore, and obviously they didn't feel as spiritually, connected as they did in the month of Ramzan, obviously. So a lot of that has to do with just being part of the community.
Yeah.
Being around the same people. Brother Ali, what do you think about that aspect?
Yeah, I think that being around Muslims, especially, you used the example from Ramadan. During Ramadan, everybody comes together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest difference. Usually people, they mind their own thing. And I think that's why Ramadan is so special, because it kind of forces everybody to be together. The Muslim community, fasting, praying, it forces you to, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think that in the end, things like that in a community, it builds stronger bonds, which will strengthen, the connections between Muslims, which is huge. I think that is something very important. If you strengthen connection between Muslims, it can make drastic impacts in a community and how that community might be perceived.
Interesting. So the next thing that you would, look at, and that, when we're talking about communities, I think of, for example, in communities, right, we usually have a gap, right? There's older members of community, there's younger members of community, and everybody's obviously, working together, right? They're believing together, they're going to the masjid together, right? So one of the things I look at, for example, is with the youth, or let's not say the youth, let's say the children. Yeah, exactly. The children today, you could say, there is sort of a divide between the children today and even the youth today, even more than in the past for various reasons.
Hold on a second. What age group are we talking?
Well, I mean, any age group of children, I would just say mostly maybe 8 to 12.
That's the children category.
Yeah, or 6 to 12. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so there is a divide basically because of a number of factors. Obviously, social media, TikTok, everything having to do something with that. But the question is that looking at the way masjids are today, right, and how the kids have changed, is there a difference today than, let's say when we were younger, let's say, because obviously we are, we're considered youth. Yeah. So when we were that age, do you see a difference in how the community is today and how it was back then?
Well, the children definitely act differently.
Is there what about respect? Yeah.
Yeah, of course there's a difference in respect. You can say that for any generation though. Like your parents are probably saying the same thing to you, okay, these children aren't, and their parents are probably saying the same thing to them. Of course, with technology advancing the way it is, I think that kind of leapfrogged some important aspects. Like, obviously, we grew up during like a time where the internet,
we had technology
it wasn't the same. The internet wasn't the same as it was now.
Yeah.
we were playing Angry Birds, and these guys
Right.
are, in Minecraft and stuff like that. But, obviously there's a huge difference between the technology that, children have today versus back then. Even we think about, devices like iPads and iPhones. These didn't exist like 20 years ago. I mean, I'm not saying that it didn't exist when, we weren't using
They had
them.
different versions, but
Yeah, there were different
nothing
versions.
like
You won't get the same level what we have right now.
So you're saying that we just grew up on different things, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much that. At the end of the day, it means when think about it this way. Some people, they grew up, okay, like if we look at like 100 years ago, they grew up doing different things. Like, okay, they don't it was a completely different world. So they can obviously say, oh, this is the children that they are today, which is true. I mean,
I feel like the number one thing with the children that makes them really different from any other generation, any other age group, right, is that the children, like 6 to 12 or around there,
Yeah.
they try and act older because they have phones.
And
They
they have
try.
social media.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Like
they
social
have
media.
unprecedented access to information and knowledge that we had no idea about. You know?
They're exposed to this adult world
Yeah.
that they want to be part of.
I feel like they're mature. They're trying to mature
Yeah.
faster, even though.
I mean, it's not mature faster. It's more like
Progress faster, right?
Yeah.
it's not
they're
progress
trying to
faster. It's just
evolve faster than everyone else.
there's less censorship. Like things are less censored. They can get their hands on anything, really.
Yeah, because really with technology, especially with like the age, for instance, like us, we don't get our phones at 12. I've seen a lot of children.
Well, I
running around
mean,
with their own phones at 12 years
I mean,
old.
I get what he's saying,
That's
but when I was in 5th grade, there were kids with iPhones. It's not.
yeah, I mean,
It,
there
it did
were-
exist, so it's not like.
I
you know,
mean,
it's not a new
crazy.
concept.
Okay, I mean like regular public schools. I'm talking about the Muslim community.
I mean, the Muslim community had them too. It's not just a one-way street.
That's true.
So
Well, I mean,
we can
like,
say that maybe.
I mean,
yeah.
like the advancements.
Or maybe like the media that,
Yeah.
that the media that
Actually,
we consume was
that's a
completely.
that's a
Yeah,
big difference.
yeah.
It's a difference in the quality of the content that's kind of coming out.
For
in
example,
today's world.
some type of kids, back then maybe they're playing some kind of,
Yeah.
even like an action video game that was considered crazy. But today, the stuff that they're using, just like scrolling through TikTok, is a lot
It's a lot
crazier
worse.
than that.
Because now, like, people are getting more used to like short form content,
Yeah.
especially like YouTube Shorts,
Yeah.
Instagram Reels.
12-second videos.
Yeah, they get-
TikTok brain, as it's called. TikTok brain, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
TikTok brain, iPad kids, there's a lot.
yeah. So that's the thing. But, about for example, the community. So why do you think, not why, but about this divide between the younger the youth today, or the children, and, for example, the rest of the community? Why do you think this divide exists?
Honestly,
It's because of technology, or?
I would say that I feel like that the children, since they think they're older, they think of you as an equal. Like it used to be, respect your elders. The guy's older than you, you have to do what he wants, right? You give him a chair, right? He's older than you. But I feel like now the children, that's kind of, it's somewhat there, but because they think they're a little older, they act older. Oh, I already saw the worst of social media. Now I'm an equal.
So then respect is taken out.
Yeah,
It's not like that person's older than me.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, we're all in the
Scrolls on
same.
social media, so do I. So we're equals.
That's an interesting concept.
I feel like if children are being grown up or are being raised off of social media, they're consuming a lot of negative content that's really prevalent nowadays, which takes things such as like respect out of the equation,
Yeah.
which really causes this whole divide to happen.
Kind of desensitizes them, right?
It
that's perfect.
desensitizes.
So there's one aspect we could look at it. What do you guys think of it as a positive thing? We're talking about the negative aspect of it. Okay, now these kids are desensitized. They don't have as much, respect, let's say, for their elders. Let's say the other aspect of it, like you were saying, that, younger kids now see the older, let's say the youth, as somewhat of their equals, right? They're not treating them with respect. Could that be a good thing? Could this now cause, for example, the kids now have someone to look up to, you could say? They look up to the youth in that way when there's not that extra, respect. It's kind of like a older brother relationship in the community? What do you guys think about that?
I mean, if kids don't respect their elders, then isn't that kind of self-destructive in their case?
Interesting.
Because
Yeah.
if they don't respect their elders, then like, how are they gonna make connections in the world? How are they gonna operate in the real world?
That's definitely something that Islam also. It's a big thing that Islam preaches to us, is that having respect for our elders, having respect
especially for your
parents,
If
of
you don't
course.
respect your parents, that's a huge
Yeah, I would say like the number one, like one thing that's very important is that since they're, you know, like I said, I mentioned that they think of themselves as equals. That means that barrier of respect that they could think of you, oh, that I look up to that guy. They don't have that same respect anymore. So they think of you as an equal. It doesn't mean I want to be like that guy. It's I'm already like that guy.
Right.
Because I already do the same. Oh, I use social media, so they think they're like big shots. They can do whatever they want, do whatever they want to people. Because especially like the people on social media, they're not all sunshine and rainbows. There's like a lot of really like
Because it's a different view of reality, right?
Yeah.
It's not how people are really living their lives, and not how people actually act. Sometimes you'll see videos of like people doing pranks and stuff or something severe, and you're like, oh wow, look, I can't believe they did that. They're doing it with a camera in front of them, right? Nobody, if they did that regularly on the street, some of the things that we see in some of these prank videos, then they would be classified as mentally unsafe. So there's a difference there. Brother Ali, do you have any experiences with how the community has helped you? How do you feel that you have been helped by the community or a community?
Well, I mean, there's many examples, but I think when it comes to community helping, you know, not just children, but everybody really, it kind of, you know, the community has an impact. It's a pretty big impact on especially children. And I think you guys were bringing up some good points about the social media and how it's, you know, it's changing, and the world's changing too. You know, about the advancement of technology, of course. But I think that mostly, when I think of my own experiences with the, you know, sometimes if you're going and reading your namaz in a masjid, right? How someone might treat you. Like I remember, I was just, you know, reading my namaz, and then some uncle picked me up and he was saying something, right? So it's just these little things that, you know.
So when you were younger, you're saying?
Yeah.
So you were reading your namaz?
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, some uncle picked me up because I guess there was no spots. So it's just little things like that. Like if you like have respect for somebody, and I think that is an important point though. If the adults and the children have respect for one another, because I mean, you should be kind to the young as well. So if the adults are rude to the children, and the children are rude to the adults, then of course it's gonna change the community drastically. It's gonna change the way their children will think anyway. So it'll change both, and I think that's pretty dangerous.
Like you were mentioning earlier though about a community raises a child. If this child is acting out of line and he's like wrecking everybody, like for instance, if someone if they're like, you know, just let's say they're trying to discuss something like some Islamic topic, right? And this kid comes in and he just starts like spitting on people, and he's like walking around and he's like trying to annoy you.
Right. So if a kid in the community you're saying is acting, you know, very rude, or they're disruptive behavior,
what do you expect the uncle to do? Just let it happen? I think that is why a lot of these children act out of line.
But they're children.
I'm not saying that they should be beaten. I'm just saying that like they should.
So I mean, there's an equal in terms of this in community. There's an equal responsibility on the parent, of course. The parent has to take care of their children, make sure they're, you know, acting with respect towards others. And then there is also a certain amount of thing on others to have to tolerate that behavior, right? Because at the end of the day, the terrible twos do exist. Kids do physically act different when they're younger. And at the end of the day, like Brother Ghazi, you just said, they're children. So we can't say like, well, that kid spit on another kid. Like at the end of the day, as people older than the age of children, there's a clear difference, obviously.
No, I mean, like that.
So we do have to have a certain level of tolerance.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the parents should raise their child with like teach them respect, and like other positive attributes.
Yeah, so that is mostly on the parents, you can
And
say.
also put them in an environment where they can learn the positive qualities of Islam and grow up like a proper Muslim. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think if a kid goes to the masjid every week, they're part of the Islamic community around them. They have Islam has a role in their lives, and they're in a good community where they feel good. I don't think that would definitely be a positive thing, right? And the parents are as well helping them towards the right path. Really, they're guiding them in the right way. They're not letting them do whatever they want and erratic behavior and stuff like that. Then yeah, this kind of stuff won't happen.
Yeah, but so let's just. I want to if there is like an extreme case, right, where they are lashing, and they're not like 5, 6, they're like 10, 12. Okay, these guys don't have they're like their minds aren't completely
Literally space.
So in the community, you're saying if there's a child who is acting, a 12-year-old, let's say, who is acting what specifically? They're just rude to everybody.
For instance, they're rude to everyone. An elder wants to tell them something, they talk back. They don't listen to their elders, and maybe they're just harassing people. Like, for instance, going over there and just saying weird stuff and trying to.
I mean, but that's just the way things are more today.
No, but I mean, for instance, if you are trying to raise a child, right? If you're trying to raise a child, right? You're raising a son, a daughter, right? In this situation, you come over to a masjid, you want your children to learn, and you have your 4 or 5-year-old, and there's this 12-year-old just rampaging through everyone, yelling stuff, and
so that's definitely a parent situation.
I mean, but that could be a situation where a 4 or 5-year-old could learn from that 10 or 12-year-old. But
if this community, right, this place of worship is for people to learn and this and that, what are you going to do if one kid is interrupting another kid when he's learning?
So basically, how to
keep the environment,
maintain the
environment,
tranquility of the community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're trying to say. That is obviously an important aspect as well. You can't expect to have a very religious and respectable environment. Obviously, the example of the 12-year-old, it's a easy example, but it can be the same thing if you have a group of teenagers outside smoking and doing different types of things outside of a masjid. That's obviously not good. We pray, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps all of our communities, allows us to unify in the name of Islam, inshallah.
What I'm basically trying to say is that, in a masjid, where everything is nice, right? You're trying to make your kids learn something, respect. And, for instance, role models, right? There's one guy doing something right? He's, let's just say he's helping some elderly person, right?
Yep.
And then there's another kid right next to him disrespecting that same elderly person. How is that person supposed to learn what the right thing is to do if it's conflicted?
Say, interesting point.
Because, for instance, on social media, it's not all terrible. There's some good aspects of it, and there's some bad aspects of it. But
so a controlled environment.
Exactly.
Controlled environment.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There has to be a hierarchy.
A good support system in the environment, in the community.
Yeah.
Very supportive, trying to help the children to better themselves. So yeah, that makes sense.
Supportive and patient people. That's what we need.
Very good point.
I mean, those are, if we think about the qualities.
So that's what makes a good community, right? They're supportive. They're patient with the children. They try to, help each other to improve themselves, right?
Yeah, but these are, of course, I mean, if you think about that, that's an example of Prophet Muhammad and the Ahlul Bayt. And I think that is, that's why we should probably try to, increase our ability to have that kind of akhlaq so the children will learn from it.
I actually have another example that, I just want to throw out there.
Yeah.
What if a kid is if two kids are fighting, one guy's you're not trying to fight, and the other guy's trying to fight it. What are you supposed to do in that situation?
Break it up.
Yeah. Break up the fight. Tell them that
break it up.
It's not a good thing to.
What do you do with the aggressor?
You box them out.
No. You calm
Parents.
them
Yeah,
You
calm them down.
You take them to their parents. What to speak to them? Be patient.
So they understand.
What were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say like that's exactly what I was gonna say. Just
Yeah, that's exactly what has to be. It's within the entire community's responsibility, especially the parents, to maintain that type of order, right?
Well,
I was thinking
there should be like.
No, I thought you were.
Discipline.
Yeah.
Meaning like. Yes, you should bring him to his parents, or just put him in a corner and tell him, "Don't do that."
Yeah,
I thought
that's the parents' job. So the parents.
I thought you were talking about a scenario where the kid is like rampaging, trying to attack somebody. Then you just like.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. For instance,
that's a good aspect of the community, is because the parents come together, right? If they see something out of line, right? Especially the masjid. If you see a kid, right? We're talking about this. If a kid is in the masjid, he's doing something, erratic. He's causing, he's throwing water on people or something like that. Then the parents in the community or the elders in the community, they'll tell the kid, "Hey, don't do that. Like, why are you doing this? Don't do that. That's not a good thing to do."
But what if the parents are siding with him? Because you always know, like, if it's a little kid, the parents are always going to defend them. So what are you going to do? If the parents don't want to do anything about it, this kid is defiant and he's disturbing the peace.
Just avoid the guy at the end of the day. I mean, if we see, we're talking about from the Islamic. Yeah.
I want to talk about like this whole point we're trying to make about like communities in general.
Yeah.
So are we trying to say that regarding children, what's important is that for children in general, parents should like teach good Islamic values to children. However, if there is like obviously like children, they're children, they act rebelliously, especially when you're in your early teens. So are we trying to say that like our community should be more patient towards these children?
Well, I think in the early teen stage, if you look, you'll see there are disciplined children at that age.
Yeah, but like a good number of children are.
I think that's just because, could a parent make sure that they're not like, they can be disciplined, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. That.
Yeah. I'm just trying to find like the general point.
Yeah, I think that if your children are acting up at like 10 or 12, you can still, of course, teach them akhlaq, but if you teach them before that, you shouldn't expect that from them.
So everybody, like, I think a great point to mention is that if we're more involved in communities, right, and we're talking about community like we already described, common values, we're talking about Islamic, we're talking about, on this show, we're talking about, for example, our masjid, right? Let's say we go to the masjid all the time. For example, like you're saying, the kids, for the children, if they're going to the masjid, they're active in the masjid, they're constantly listening to lectures, they're constantly participating, right? Because like you were mentioning, Brother Ali, earlier, you said that you were in the masjid and, you were trying to pray, and then the uncle's, he doesn't need to pray. And then there is a kind of thought that, children, they don't need to participate. But really, it is a good thing if children participate. Not only in, reading namaz, but in like discussions like we're having here, like we're saying discussions are needed in our community. If children, for example, we have discussions with our children, we include them in some of the programs instead of kind of leaving them to the side. The kids can go run around and, if they sure, if you want to let them run, sure, but they should also be involved in the program so that they feel that, they're a part of the community as well. And it's not that, they're just kind of coming there with their parents, I think. Yeah, that's a great point that, children, they should be included in part of the program. Now, I think the problem is some are like, it's not included. Like if there's a program for children, it's not necessarily for adults and children. It's kind of separate. So I think that in that regard, it is important that there is like some combined programs where the children and the adults will be involved. Because I don't think there are any like scenarios where I think that
there are some like adult things that children can't see, can't talk about at a certain
right, or they can't understand,
yeah.
Right?
That's what I'm saying. They should probably find some middle ground.
Well, I think
I want to take this up to a higher level. What if it's not a 12-year-old? What if it's a 15, 16-year-old? What are you going to do about it?
Like you?
Them, be patient with them.
No, I mean, like, the guy...
I mean, usually you would just speak to their parents at the end of the day.
Like, let's just get...
here's the thing. Let's not get into specifics.
There's so many...
It's in general, right?
There's so many, complex scenarios that we could discuss.
So,
maybe someone didn't have parents.
Right. So, in general, if there's people in the community, right? Because we're talking about community.
Yeah.
In general, if a guy in the community, like you're saying, a teen, they're acting out or they're being rude, whatever it is, being around that community environment, there'll be adults in the community or their parents or whatever it may be that would, push them towards feeling more welcome in the community, right? So that, maybe they won't feel this way. They won't have that type of erratic behavior. That's the main thing about the community.
So are we saying that a good Islamic community is one that's patient and open-minded towards different people that act I don't know, like,
I feel like that's
bringing people together.
Yeah, I feel like
unity.
that's what an Islamic community should be. That we should be following the Islamic rules by using what the prophets did. Be patient with them. Right? Discuss with them. Explain why'd you do that, right? And kind of just talk to them. Take it easy with them.
So,
although there are some bad apples that need.
Yeah.
Inshallah,
yeah.
But
so, to summarize, like we were mentioning here, and even through the first Quranic verse that I mentioned, we're talking about the ways that we can improve ourselves, right? Being more integrated in the community, at the end of the day, one of the main aspects of it, and one of the main things that we're required as Muslims, is to strive to improve ourselves, to have some sort of improvement. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stresses in these verses how He will help us strive in this cause, in ourselves, and that everything that we have has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessing. In the Quran, Surah 61, verse 12 says, that you believe in Allah and His Messenger, and strive in the cause of Allah with your wealth and your persons. That is better for you, if you did not know. Surah 29, verse 70 says, and as for those who strive in our path, we will surely guide them in our ways. Verily, Allah is with those who do good. So, everything we know in this world serves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is working in unity, and the center point of that is towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we can give the example of, for example, the sun and the moon, how the sun sets according to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like that, we as well serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The difference is that we have free will. So in this conversation about community, it's not required. You don't have to go to the masjid. You don't have to go for Friday prayer. You don't have to go to the masjid during Ramadan. But what this community does, what this positive aspect of the community does, is it helps us to become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To be around people, as we've mentioned today, who have common values, who have common beliefs, who can uplift each other, as Brother Ghazi mentioned, with patience, inshallah, so that we can become better Muslims. So, you guys have any final comments you'd like to say about the topic of the importance of community in people's lives?
Yeah, I do have to say that a good point that you just reminded me of was, if you do have, like, for example, if you surround yourself with people, you said common values, but if someone doesn't have common values, right? Or if somebody, for example, doesn't have, maybe they take their namaz lightly, you might also take your namaz lightly. So if you are around somebody who's always reading their namaz on time, that's going to have its effect on you. But if you are with someone who maybe they don't like to read Quran, even if they're a Muslim, right? Or even a non-Muslim, maybe they don't believe in in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this and that, it obviously has its effect on you. So of course it's better not to have friends who don't practice or who don't strengthen your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think this is a very key point that it might get overlooked by a lot of people in especially today's societies, that they think, okay, it doesn't matter, I'm not going to go follow this person's footsteps, but at the end of the day, it will matter and it'll have its effects. So it's better if you, for example, if you have a friend and okay, he does let's just say he smokes cigarettes. Okay, so if someone smokes cigarettes, maybe he'll suggest, oh, why don't you try one?
Yeah.
Or why don't you, smoke a cigarette? Even maybe the smell. And even if it doesn't make you smoke any cigarettes,
normalize.
It'll desensitize you.
Yeah.
That's the right word. To desensitize you to that smoking. Whereas someone maybe who's who's never seen anybody smoke before, I know that's probably uncommon, but if you've never seen anyone smoke before and you see it and you see the smoke coming towards you, maybe you'll try to, the smell, the look, it'll be, kind of, you'll try to stay away from it more.
It would be normal if you see it a lot, it was normal.
Yeah. I mean, that's all I'd add. That it's important to make sure that you surround yourself with people who are going to bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and who strengthen your religion. Because otherwise it might have the reverse effect.
I would say that one more thing to quickly add is that a community is a system. Everybody has to be in their group. I mean, they have to do what is required.
Everybody has a role, right?
Everyone has a role, exactly. One guy doesn't do his role, the whole thing can collapse. So everyone should stay in line to, even the small things like putting out the dastakhan and
helping to clean up and helping to give out water and little things like that.
During Ramzan.
Right. Brother Ghazmi, anything else you'd like to add? Well, on that note, we turn to advice from Imam Ali alayhi salam. Imam Ali alayhi salam, in his sermon 53 of Nahj al-Balagha, when he appointed Malik al-Ashtar, the governor of Egypt, he admonished him on the correct behaviors to instill in himself and to deal with the people. Now, one saying in particular, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, people are of two types. Either they are of the same faith as you, or they are an equal in humanity. People make mistakes. Hence, forgive them as you want Allah to forgive you. Well, that's all the time we have left for today. Thank you to everyone who joined today's episode of Youth Perspectives. We're going to now, inshallah, end the show on reading Dua for the 12th Imam. May Allah hasten his appearance. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم كن لوليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وسلم. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Youth Perspectives here on Velayat TV USA. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Khudafis.